Alright, today going to be doing some general maintenance. Want to clean the mass airflow sensor, change the fuel filter, and then also going to be doing just a general oil change, that kind of thing. This morning I went ahead and I had that recall done for the auto park. Using the OBD2, I was able to turn that off. I'll make another video on that in a couple days, but just wanted to kind of go over a couple things on the pickup itself. The mass airflow sensor is going to be, you can kind of see the top of the turbo there. Mass airflow sensor will be right before that. So in order to get to it, we're going to have to take the tube off of the air intake, and then all the engine cover. There'll be another foam cover underneath. That'll come off, and then we'll get to the mass airflow sensor. I also have the EGR diffuser tube block plates from No Eco, and I'll be installing those today. So yeah, just wanted to kind of give you a little intro, what's going to happen, and then we'll tear into it. Alright, so we're under the truck. Just pulled the plug on the fuel filter. I went ahead and from Gino's garage I got the plug release. This little guy, see how well you can see it. Makes it super easy to change the fuel filter. That there used to be a yellow plug that was in the very bottom of the fuel filter, and it just made it so it was a nightmare trying to pull it. I use a long transmission funnel just so I don't get diesel everywhere, and makes it super simple. Anyways, the fuel filter housing there, it's pretty well all dripped out now. I'll go ahead and pull that housing, put the filter back in, or put the new filter in, and then we'll be good to go. When you start the truck back up, you have to cycle the fuel pump, I don't know, like 7 or 8 times, and that's just listening to it, letting it stop pumping, and then cycling the key again, and doing that 7 or 8 times, and you're good to go. A lot easier than the old diesels, trying to get them started back up or priming the pump. Anyway, we'll get this done up. I'll get out into the light here in a second and show that Gino's plug. It saves tons of time, and I used to get filthy dirty trying to put a plastic bag around there, try not to get dripped on diesel just because of that yellow plug when it let it just flow out. So this way's a lot cleaner. Alright, so this is a plug from Gino's garage. If I remember right, it's like, I don't know, 16 or 17 bucks. I've never had any issues with it. It's a 19 millimeter. Just jump under there, you're able to pull the whole thing out, and then with that transmission funnel, it just drips right down into your pan. No mess, no fiddling with a plastic bag draped over underneath or any of that garbage. So super good. The O-ring looks good and in good shape. I'll just clean this off before I put it back up, and make sure the fuel filter housing is all clean before I put that new filter in. That new filter, I just picked it up from the shop, or from the dealer a couple days ago, and it is completely different than the ones that I had been changing. This has a new like plastic film underneath it, or over the top, and as you can see, there's still the honeycomb underneath, or I don't know if it'll show up on the video, but there's still the honeycomb underneath this plastic pre-filter, I guess it would be. Really bizarre that they did it this way. Hopefully it'll work better, or the same, if not better, but yeah, interesting. Alright, so pulling the fuel filter, it after you release with the plug at the bottom, get most of that fuel out. I was unscrewing. I was using it's still under the truck. I believe it's a 98 millimeter or 93 millimeter. Let me grab it real quick. I was just using, let's see, it's a 93 millimeter oil filter wrench. Worked just the same. I know Gino's Garage and a couple other places you can get an actual tool that's specifically for the fuel filter housing, but this was free. Anyway, looks like my fuel filter is pretty darn toast. Glad I'm changing it. I was contemplating whether or not I wanted to wait till after winter blend was done for fuel, but a fuel filter's like $45 or something like that, so kind of worth just changing it out. And after winter blend, I'll have probably another 4,000 or 5,000 miles on it. I'll just change it and get that done. Especially with this new design fuel filter, I'll probably do it a little bit less just to see how it's weathering and what it's like in there. Anyway, I'll clean this out. Like I was saying though, as you're unscrewing the housing, there's still fuel in there, so it'd be smart to have your funnel still up there. That way it's catching all that diesel and you're not going to get rained on with diesel. Other than that, pretty simple job. And I'll just change the filter, clean the housing up. I'll be throwing it back up. Alright, I had forgot to mention the new fuel filter does come with a new O-ring. It's extremely important that you put that O-ring back in the right groove that it's supposed to be in. So we'll just change that out real quick. Here's the old one, and we'll just get this new one put right back in the correct groove. There's several large grooves in here, so it's kind of hard to remember which one it's supposed to be in. There's enough diesel still kind of on the filter itself, on the filter housing and around it. I'm just kind of lubing that O-ring up a little bit. I'll probably grab a little bit more diesel out of the bucket that I drained out of, and just kind of lube up that O-ring a little bit more, just so it's good and lubed. Clean up my plug. And O-ring was back where it was needing to be, and it's just hand tight for now. When I'm under the truck getting ready to put the housing back on, I'll make sure that it's snug. It doesn't have to be real tight. You are screwing metal into plastic, so if you over tighten it, chances are you're going to break your plastic housing. Not going to be a cheap fix. Plus you'll be middle of your project and not being able to either drive to the dealership or just be a pain in the neck. So other than that drops in. Fuel filter, it only goes in one way. There's teeth on the bottom of it, and looks like this one's kind of engineered, so there's actually grooves on this plastic filler, as well as grooves inside here, and those line up as well. So get those lined up, and then it just kind of pushes down, locks in place, guarantees that it's straight, and that kind of thing. With this new one, it's pretty interesting that it does have that. I can pull my old filter out. This old one, it didn't have that, so that could be part of the reasoning behind it, is people were installing the filters wrong, possibly. And they weren't aligning correctly, creating some kind of issue. This just kind of guarantees that you won't have that issue. Alright, got it all installed back up. Fuel filters cleaned up. I've kind of cleaned up some of my diesel mess a little bit, and I'll cycle the ignition, like I said, 7 or 8 times, just to make sure that there is fuel in there. If there isn't enough fuel in there, or it's cavitated, you'll know by the truck running rough. If that's the case, just turn it off and cycle the fuel filter a couple more times, and it'll clear that up. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and start working on the diffuser tube block plates, as well as the mass airflow sensor, cleaning that. Truck's got about 44,000, 42,000, somewhere in there, miles. I'm the second owner. I bought it with 15,000 miles, so I'm guessing the mass airflow sensor has never been cleaned, and I'm also guessing that the diffuser tube is going to be trashed. So we'll dig into that. You've got 8mm on this side of the diffuser tube to disconnect, and then 10mm on this side right here. There's 2 on each side, so one here and then one on this back side, and then you've got one here as well as one down there. Looks like after removing the plastic tubes, or the plastic engine housing, or the plastic engine covers, as well as the rubber diffuser cover, I can get into the mass airflow sensor without removing my airflow box. Now this is the S&B filter intake, so with the stock I think it's the same, but looks like I can get to it without having to remove the whole housing. I'll know more as I dig into it, but I'm hoping I don't have to remove it. Not that it's a real big deal. I just would rather not have to take everything apart to do that. Torque's 40 and there's only one torque on that mass airflow sensor. Other than that, it'll be good to go. Pull that off and be right as rain. All right, moment of truth. Haven't had the diffuser tube off since new, so 42,000 miles, and we'll just kind of pull this out. Let's see what we got here. Hanging up on something. There we go. Well, not as bad as I expected. Definitely not real clean, but I was kind of expecting it to be a little dirtier. So we'll get that. I'll clean it up just so when I store it, it's not going to get trash everywhere. But with the block off plates, this won't be going back on. So let's see if I can find those. I don't remember where I put the block off plates. I'll have to find them here in a second. We had a big New Year's Eve party at the house, so had to clean up my workbench. But I'll show those, get those thrown off, and then next I'll pull the map sensor. Alright, so I got my mass airflow sensor pulled out. Let's see if this can get focused up. Pretty clean, I would say. I mean, 45,000 miles. That part's pretty dirty there. Definitely worth pulling it out and getting it clean. Make sure I get the best kind of mileage and performance I can. I've got my No Eco block off plates installed on the engine side, or the intake side. It did have new screws or screws to go in that on the engine side. On the EGR side, the block off plate just used the same 10mm bolts that you'd taken off the truck. So got that done, and everything should be pretty good. Just need just a matter of cleaning up that mass airflow sensor now, putting that back in. Again, that was a Torque's 40 for getting that out. I was able to get mine out and unplugged without removing the air intake box or the tube. I'm glad I didn't have to remove that. Not that it's a huge deal, just wasn't wanting to do that. Do that. I'll prime that pump again, go for a drive, get the oil good and warm, and then I'll come back and do the oil change. Alright, got my mass airflow sensor cleaned. I used some CRC throttle body air intake cleaner. Quick drying, really any kind of cleaner like that is going to work fine. I wanted to do something that was a little bit different than just like a standard brake cleaner, just so it's less abrasive on this sensor. But got it looking really clean, didn't have to use any brushes. All I had to do was just really just spray it a couple times. The spray with that pressure got it pretty good, and then I just used some shop towels or rags and just kind of wiped it off and then sprayed it again. Real simple, kind of hard to see. There's a couple sensors right there in the middle. Might brush those up just a little bit more and then throw it back in. So I'm going to let that mass airflow sensor dry just a little bit more before throwing it back in. I'm going to talk a little bit about the truck itself, some of the things I've done to it. The truck is a Tradesman edition, threw on some wheels, tires. It had sport mirrors on it, have now the tow mirrors. For the longest time, I'd say for about the last 2 years, the turn signals and then the puddle lights underneath did not work. With the OBD2 tuner, I was able to activate those. I was able to activate the turn signal lights in there. Dealership, when I went in for the recall, I was like, hey, if you guys can get that turned on, that'd be great. They said that they fiddled with it for about an hour and wasn't able to get them turned on. I went ahead and purchased that Alpha OBD application, and then also the like a $10 on Amazon, the V-Peak, I think it is, and that V-Peak's worked great. Haven't had any issues with that. I was able to do those changes. I was able to get that auto park turned off. Several other things that I'd like to do that I just haven't gotten a chance to yet. The truck is tuned by Sofa King Tune. I've been pretty happy with them. Their customer service is probably the best thing I've been happy with. Jimmy's been great. I worked with Chris quite a few times with a couple things that I had questions about. Customer service has been great. Prior to the recall, I was running the GD hot tune, and I loved that tune. That was all I knew on the truck. The best mileage that I got on GD Green Diesel Engineering was about 27. Towing, I was able to get, what was it? We took a trip from Idaho to California and back, and I was getting like 14 pulling our 26-foot camper trailer. I was super happy with that. Got the Sofa King tune, and really about the best mileage I've been able to get was 22. And that's, I don't know, I feel like I really haven't changed anything in my driving habits. So I'm hoping with doing this mass airflow sensor, doing the block off place with the EGR, replacing that fuel filter, that I kind of get back up to where I was mileage wise. I've been toying with going stage 2, just haven't really wanted to pull the trigger yet on that. Got the tunnel cover on the back. It's kind of dirty right now. Application for doing the V-Peak, and then the V-Peak tuner that I have. So with this, I was able to change all of those things. The turn off the seatbelt chime. You can change your TPMS sensor to being lower if you're doing any kind of off-roading or anything like that. Other than that, I've been really happy with the truck. I don't know. I'm torn whether or not I want to. You hear all the horror stories online about the EGRs burning up and trucks starting on fire, and it's just, I don't know. Is it worth going into debt more for a truck that's Yeah, it'll get you more, but in the end, will it get you anything more other than just towing? I mean, it's not going to get any better fuel economy. This truck's able to do everything that I want it to. I wish it was a long bed so I could haul my dirt bikes at the same time that I haul my trailer, without having to do any finicking with the tailgate. But really been happy with the truck. Other than that, it's pretty well stock. The air intake, and the tunes. I'm sitting right at 42,246 miles. I've got the Edge CTS monitor. I really like that. I'm able to do mobile regens. I guess that was one of the things that I liked more about the Green Diesel engineering, is their tune didn't use nearly as much depth. Their tune didn't regen nearly as much. Sofa Kings, it does the same regen cycles as what the factory recommends, which I guess might be possibly in the long run better for the engine itself. But I have a feeling, if the components for the emissions are what's going bad and what kills the fuel economy, I think if you were to get rid of some of those emissions, as far as time and distance between each regen, it would help give you better mileage as well. So now that this mass airflow sensor's cleaned and is dry, I'm going to go ahead and throw this back in. Got to run a couple errands, get the oil nice and hot, and then I'll come back, talk about the oil change. As far as the oil change goes, it's pretty simple. However, every time I do it, I have to go off of a sheet of like order to do things. So you let the truck warm up. There's just a simple way. It's simple, but on these motors, because of the way they're designed, you have to do certain things a certain way. Otherwise, the oil doesn't completely drain out of the engine and either remains in the heads or in the pan and can be causing engine failures. So I'll talk about that a little bit more after the truck's warm and we're good to go on that.